Your Worship, members of the Council, members of the public, out-of-town guests, my name is Richard Pope, as was announced, and I am a delegate representing the Willow Beach Field Naturalists group. I will try to be brief. The great Russian writer Dostoevsky once said that it's impossible to hold an audience for more than half an hour. He was wrong. I found about anywhere between 30 and 40 seconds, and the eyes start to glaze over and roll up. So I'll try to be hard-hitting and quick and be done in 5 minutes. Let me begin by reviewing my memo to Mayor and Council of last Monday, which reads as such. The development of Cobourg Harbour is of major importance and interest to this town. As Deputy Mayor Frost said in Council on January the 27th, 2014, we have to get it right this time. And quite rightly, Mayor Brockenier stated that there would be full and extensive public consultation. The resolution that was passed stated, and I read, that Council refer the matter to the Marina Manager for consideration and communication back to the Willow Beach Field Naturalists when developing Phase 2 and 3 of the Marina expansion plans. Well, there was zero communication back to Willow Beach Field Naturalists. We were thus very shocked to hear it rumored that on this coming July the 9th, Shore Plan Engineering is planning to hold meetings to discuss the harbour development plans with interested groups and with the public, and that these are to be the only such meetings. This surely cannot be the case. We were promised a full public inquiry. It would be very hard to alert the public to these meetings, only one of which is even open to the public, let alone to prepare properly. Also, many people are away. Surely there will need to be more meetings for Shore Plan to learn what the public hopes is going to happen with its own harbour. It was particularly alarming to learn in the letter of March 26, 2014 from Shore Plan Engineering to Mr. Paul Gauthier, a letter incidentally obtained only with great difficulty by filing under the Freedom of Information Act. It was shocking to learn that apparently upon Mr. Gauthier's advice, Shore Plan, and I quote, has reduced the time allocated to the meetings with the existing clubs, residents, and public. We, Shore Plan, understand that you, Mr. Gauthier, will assist with organizing these meetings concurrently to reduce the time required. This would suggest that contrary to the stated desire of the Mayor and Council, neither Mr. Gauthier nor Shore Plan consider it necessary to waste a good deal of time on public input. This is not going to go over well with the public, especially when they find out about it, and eventually they will find out about it. Paul Gauthier's letter inviting the Willow Beach Field Naturalist Group to a meeting is dated June the 23rd, 2014. But it was not until July the 1st or later that many people really found out about this meeting scheduled for Wednesday, July the 9th. Many were out of town because of the holiday weekend. Many of the people of Cobourg, the ones who use the harbour daily all year around, are not going to find out at all. This concerns us deeply because in the end it will mean that they will not have had their say. Let's not waste time and waste money by having Shore Plan Engineering present a plan that will not be acceptable to the majority of harbour users. What we'd hoped for was a level of consultation similar to that of the 1994 and 1995 West Harbour Development Plan and the more recent Parks Master Plan. We believe our Mayor and our Council also hoped for the same thing. Phase 1 of the extremely impressive 4-phase 1994 and 95 West Harbour Waterfront Development Plan included, and I quote, an extensive interviewing process with stakeholder groups, agencies, and interested individuals and landowners. Phase 4 of that plan included the preparation of the final recommended harbour redevelopment plan and an implementation strategy inclusive of costs, phasing approaches for implementation, and stages for approvals and subsequent plan refinement. On page 4 of that 1994 and 95 plan, we read, and I quote, in addition to the personal contacts that were made in Phase 1, the public consultation process included an extensive review and discussion period at the end of Phase 3 to gain comments and support for conceptual directions for the West Harbour. The 3 alternative concepts were also on display in the Town Hall for over 1 month to allow community members additional opportunity to review the schemes and consider the details and advantages or disadvantages of the alternatives. The interest in the plans for waterfront was overwhelming. End of quote. That was in 1994. Now in 2014, 20 years later, we're asked to limit ourselves to 2 representatives from each club for a quick several-hour meeting this Wednesday at 3 o'clock, apparently together with a number of other interest groups simultaneously, to discuss an impossibly wide range of such contentious topics as Phase 2 and 3 of the Marina expansion plan, expanded parking plans, expanded boat storage plans, options for the East Pier, options for the West Headland, optimum placing of parking, boat storage and handling facilities, public access and facilities. It's mind-boggling and it's endless. All of this to be followed briefly by a publicized public meeting at 6:30 the same day to discuss all the same matters. You know, get it all over as fast as possible. This does not inspire confidence in the public. What would be really meaningful to interest groups, all the interest groups, and to the public at large, would be to be allowed to see Shore Plan's preliminary report when they formulate it, and then to get a chance to comment extensively. May we suggest, together with Laurie and Bill Wensley, whom I believe wrote to the Mayor and Council, that in addition to the July 9th meeting, which in itself is a good idea, may I suggest that Council request at least one large open public meeting with at least 3 weeks prior notice to discuss the details of the expansion plan, which details should be summarized for the public in that public notice so that everybody will know what's to be debated. Only after this kind of preparation can there be any meaningful input so that, again, in the words of Deputy Mayor Frost, we can get it right this time. Thank you for your time and for your attention.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Richard, for that presentation. Can you just stay at the dais for a moment? Because members of council may have questions for you, because as you said, this is very important. And we do have to get it right, and we have to make sure that there is an appropriate process for public input as well. I couldn't agree with you more. Any members of council have any questions for Richard while he's here? Councilor Newton first, and then Councilor Todd.
Thank you for your presentation. Just wanted to clarify, understand, you, at the end of your presentation, you had indicated one large public meeting with at least 3 weeks' notice. This is after the July 9th meeting.
Yes.
And I just wanted to make sure, do you see that being facilitated by council or the mayor as the chair of the meeting, or an alternative?
Either. It's a suggestion. You people know more about it than I do, how to organize it. What I'd like to see, and everybody that's been talking to me wants to see, is some type of a large meeting. Something like the ones we had for the Parks Master Plan and the Park Theatre, where it's a free-for-all and everybody can get up and give their opinion, and the people write down and then think about it and then reincorporate it into the plan. So whether it were, whether the council were to ask Shore Plan to do this, or whether the council wanted to schedule such a meeting and do it themselves. To me, it really doesn't matter so long as we have it. I just want to see the public consultation. I mean, if my side loses, that's okay. I hope they won't. But I'd like to have everybody get their innings and have the Shore Plan Engineering Group really know what the majority of the people would like to see, and then come up with a livable compromise that all the different groups can live with. And we can't do that without adequate a public consultation. And these 2 meetings on Wednesday, where half the people are out of town and don't know about it, and Willow Beach is going to have 2 people there only. We're only allowed 2 people. We've got 2 hours, and we've got about 10 other interest groups too, and that battery of issues to be discussed, all of which could take the half an hour or the hour of any one presentation. It isn't enough. I think it was probably well intended, but it's not enough.
I'd like to follow up, if I could, just on what you just said with regards to the 2 meetings on Wednesday, because I'm only aware of one.
Yes, that's because you weren't invited to the first one.
But
it's apparently just for interest groups. I wasn't invited either, but then Willow Beach got invited, found the invitation a week later, and contacted Margaret and I and said that we were to go to this meeting. And I said, when? And they said, this Wednesday. And I said, I have my family here, I'm out of town at the cot. Well, gotta be there, it's this Wednesday. So at Wednesday at 3 o'clock, there's a 2-hour meeting as I understand it. And then the same day, hopefully there's going to be a break for food, at 6:30, that's when the meeting you know about is going to take place.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I just wanted to ask, I'm not sure why, if this is correct, why council was not notified or invited to the 2 p.m. meeting. I'm not sure of the format, but I'm wondering whether the intent is to actually have the same presentation by the groups at the evening meeting, because I would like to hear what they say. If they're focusing on being heard at the 2 p.m. meeting, I think all of council should be able to attend to hear what is being said directly. So I'm a little confused by
Okay, so there was a notice sent out to the interest groups in the harbor area to attend a special meeting where they could get together and then they could start to express some of their ideas, their concerns, and all done in a very, very positive manner, so that Shoreline could start to gather some of the information for the for the specific active user groups in the area. If they choose to come to the public meeting on at Wednesday night and then make a further presentation so that all of council, the rest of the public are aware of what it is that, what they'd like to see take place, and they're certainly welcome to do that.
Well, I'd like to attend the 2 p.m. meeting because I'm
The
not
3
sure.
p.m.
3 p.m.
Your worship, may I make
Just
one
as an
comment?
as an observer.
Go ahead.
There will be different things. At the 3 o'clock meeting, for example, I'm going to talk about birds, nature, and the ramifications of harbor expansion for that, and represent Willow Beach Field Naturalists. At the 6:30 meeting, I'm going as a member of the public, and I'm going to talk about entirely different issues with the harbor. So it won't be the same materials, certainly not in our case anyway. So it might be of use for members of the council that were interested to be allowed to attend both meetings. I don't know.
Thank you. Councillor Todd, you were next.
Yes, thank you. I have a point of clarification, if I could, through, I'm guessing, to Mr. Watson. When I look back at the RFP, it said that the deliverables to be submitted by Shoreline were for June 1st. I'm assuming that that date is not the exact date.
Go ahead.
Worship through you to the councillor. I'll talk loud.
Okay.
Clearly, that's not doable. There is a revised schedule. I can make that available to you. But I mean, at the end of the day, the schedule is not as important as getting everything done.
Okay, thank you for that clarification, Mr. Watson, because what I'm seeing and what I'm getting a gut feeling about is what happened with the Parks Master Plan is that as the committee that was working with the consultant, we got the report at 3 in the afternoon, had a public meeting at 6. So it's that same type of time frame that is very unnerving. And as far as being invited to the 3 o'clock meeting, as a user group, I think as a councillor being elected that I'm sort of a user group for the public, and I would like to be invited to those types of meetings when it
You could come as my guest.
when it involves such a large area. And my concern when I read all the reports often is the fact that we use harbor/marina, when this is specifically speaking of a marina expansion, but we're talking about the whole use of our harbor. And that I guess I would like to go back and look at the 94. I wasn't as involved then other than as a user of the public using the West Headlands and such. So my question is that clarification for myself that there hasn't been a dialogue with the public or the user groups, and we're dealing more with the marina function, which is very separate than our harbor function.
This was not the intent of the council nor the mayor. That was clear, and the mayor has repeated that. It's just happening that way, and if we can stop it or compensate for it by expanding things, however you do it, that would be very good.
So I just want to add, there isn't an urgency to have this completed at any particular time, because after all, we're talking about something that's going to take place well in the future, so we're not in a rush. The other thing I would like to say, Richard, is that you said you hope that your group doesn't lose. Well, that's not the intent of this. We're starting with a blank page, and we hope everyone comes out as winners. We don't want to see any losers. And I know the CEO would like to make a comment too.
If I may, Your Worship, thank you, Mr. Pope. I think that maybe there's a miscommunication to some extent. The meetings are really just the beginning of the process. The idea of having a public meeting was fully intended, and that would be outlined at the public meeting on Wednesday. There will be a public meeting. The consultants have no preconceived notion of what they're going to be doing. it's a blank slate. And maybe Mr. Watson can explain on that maybe a little bit with a little more detail.
Go ahead, Mr. Wells.
Working now. Your Worship, I talked it over with Glenn Gloshin, the Director of Planning, and we were hashed back and forth what a good public process was. Because public processes are defined in the Planning Act and some of the things that we do in planning. And the process that we decided to use in this sort of mimics an official plan amendment or a couple other processes, like a secondary plan meeting. So the idea here is that we have a lot of people interested in that area. So obviously there's a few groups who are well organized and large, and that would be the Yacht Club, the Drag Boat Canoers, and the Willow Beach Group. So we short plan decided that, and I've explained this a couple of times now. It was not something to shorten the time, it was something to get the players involved face to face so that they could hear each other talking to short plan. And that's why the meetings were changed to one meeting for their stakeholders group, so that they could sit down face to face and have a discussion. That's also, I believe, why short plan's limiting the amount of people that are invited, so that it's a controllable, decent conversation so that they can hear what those people have to say. Then it'll be followed by a public meeting where everybody can come and voice their concerns. There is no preconceived anything going on down there. There is no plan. It's all wide open. We want to hear what the public wants. At that point in time, the short plan will take those comments, which you also have 2 weeks to make written submissions, which will be public. Any of the organizations or the individuals have another 2 weeks to submit written documents or additional information or whatever they'd like to supply. And short plan will sit down with the steering committee and discuss how we're going to deal with that, so that short plan goes away with the steering committee, which is made up of councillors and staff and interested people from the Parks and Rec group. And we'll send short plan away with an idea as to how they can accommodate all the comments and the information they receive. The idea then will be that we'll come back with the draft back and forth with the steering committee until we believe we have a draft that's ready. That draft will be made available to council and the public at least 2 weeks in advance of the next public meeting, which will be just like a public planning meeting. That meeting then will be held before council. Interested parties will be able to come to the mic and speak, and then it's completely in council's hands how they'd like to follow through at that point in time. They can approve it, they can send us away to do more work, they can hold another meeting, but as far as I'm concerned, we will have satisfied a fairly rigorous planning process for public consultation and presentation of material to council. Once it's at that point, council can go back and do it all over again if you so choose.
Councilor Thomas first, and Councilor Cobb.
I will stand up because I'd like to address some points. I'm glad to hear that there's been some good dialogue and discussion with regards to the meeting format. I would like to point out, though, that a public meeting normally in the planning process actually has the documents provided in advance. And I have now for a week have sent out at least 3 emails asking for an agenda. I have not received that, nor have I received any relevant background information. And then today I find out that there's actually another meeting. Now, I think I just sort of go back to a public meeting that involved a certain neighborhood with regards to the dog park issue like some months ago. And at that time, yes, it was very much with that stakeholder group, but all of council was invited and we just sat and listened. We were not part of the actual steering committee. So I think that in this case, because as Councilor Cotton pointed out, that I think we should be aware of the full agenda of consultation with stakeholders and with the public. And it may just be that it's coming. And I certainly would like to receive that before Wednesday.
Councilor Rob.
Yes, Your Worship, just a quick question. In this case, the plan that was coming forward is the same as a secondary plan for our parks and harbor area, based on what you're trying to tell us now, that it goes through a public process for the next, basically like a secondary plan that we would normally do. Is that where I'm...
Any other comments, questions?
Your Worship, through you to Councilor Rowden, the process is the same as a secondary plan. It's not a secondary plan, but we just wanted to follow something along that made sense and was explainable. And so we looked at that process because we thought that it was fairly open and involved consultation.
That may take a while.
Mayor Frost.
Yes, I just want to thank Mr. Pope for making the effort to come here. This is, the harbor area is the jewel of this town, and I've made the point several times, there are limits to growth, okay, in that area. There are competing interests that we have to look at, and I think the mayor and the director have indicated we are not in the process of rushing this thing through. We will get it done right in the end, and what we're looking for is not winners and losers, but accord and common understanding of where we're going with this.
So your points are well taken, Richard. You know, we do want to make sure that the public have their say, they have their input, and we'll take whatever time it takes to make it happen. Did you want to?
One last quick statement. It really isn't a blank slate. There is an elaborate plan put forward that none of us agree with, which is why all this is happening. So to think of it as a blank slate when the deck's already loaded with a full report presented that Shore Plan is asked to accommodate and make happen, that puts us in the position where we sort of are trying to claw back onto the deck and get onto an even keel, because we're not on them now. Second point I'd like to make is if what goes on in the labyrinthine depths of Victoria Hall was known to the public, many of these things wouldn't have to be thrashed out at all. I come here and I find out scads of information about things that had we been told, perhaps I'd made a different presentation. So again, it's that disconnect between knowledge. One of the few ways I find things out is I go and I see Stephen Peacock, and he answers very honestly all the questions, but we don't always know what questions to ask, and we're always finding out, it seems that the groups are behind the 8 ball, and that there always is a sense of urgency. Just to give you one reason why we think that, I didn't think there was a sense of urgency over the mowing of the grass, because you had that looked into and hired a consultant, and there was a schedule, and everything was in order. There'd be a last nest sweep, and 4 days before the last nest sweep, they went and mowed anyway. So it always makes you feel that if you don't get in there and get your oar in, they're going to do it and then, say, we're sorry, ask for forgiveness, not for permission. So the public sort of always feels this fighting the rear guard action, and that's the reason I made the presentation. And I know that it falls on reasonable ears, and I was glad to hear what Deputy Mayor Frost had to say, because I share those opinions, and yours too.
Well, thank you, Richard, and I appreciate your presentation. And I do know that you have been meeting with the CAO on a regular basis, about a monthly basis, and I know he has an open door policy for any citizens of the town of Cobourg who want to come in and discuss anything with him.
I feel sorry for him, because Margaret and I go every month.
Take advantage of it.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.